I recently faced my own worst nightmare. The HOA president just sawed through my nephew's treehouse while he was still inside, and her excuse, she called it removing an eyesore. Funny thing is, the only thing removed that day was my self-control when I saw him in the back of that ambulance. But let me start from the beginning. My name is Mark Hale. Most days that doesn't mean much. It's just a name you put on paperwork. But on the day the world decided to fall on my nephew, it meant everything. It meant I was the guy who was there, the guy who had to fix it. My sister, she worries. It's her job. She's a mom. My job since I got back from the army and moved in to help out is to not worry. Evan's dad works out of state for months at a time. Day to day, it's me and my sister. My job is to be the calm one, the steady hand, to build the things that need building and fix the things that get broken. That morning, we were building. Evan, who is 8 years old and has more energy than a whole platoon, was my foreman. Our project was a tree fort, a real tree house, a raised platform between two sturdy oaks in our side yard that faces the lake, set on 4x4 posts about 5 feet off the grass. We used good wood, thick posts and deck screws, not nails. I taught him how to measure, how to hold a hammer. He'd get a screw started and I'd drive it home with the drill. It was our thing. The wood smelled like pine and hard work. The sun was warm. It was a good day. We had a rhythm. He'd grab a board. I'd mark the cut. He'd hold it steady, I'd saw. The pile of scrap grew, and so did our little castle. It had a floor, 3 walls, and a crooked window he designed himself. He called it Fort Kickbutt. His mom was not thrilled with the name, but I told her it was a matter of strategic defense. You need a name that scares the enemy. Our only enemy, or so I thought, was Karen Dunn. She was the president of our homeowners association, HOA for short. Karen believed a perfect neighborhood was one where every blade of grass stood at attention and saluted. Our fort, a glorious monument to an 8-year-old's imagination, was in her eyes a violation, a blight, an unapproved structure. She'd left notes, nasty little things, tucked under our welcome mat, written in an angry, slanted script. I'd read them, fold them neatly, and use them to help start the grill. I figured it was a battle of attrition. She'd run out of expensive stationery before I ran out of charcoal. That day, she escalated. She didn't leave a note. She walked right up to the edge of our lawn, her hands on her hips, her face tight. She wore a power suit, even on a Saturday. It looked ridiculous next to our half-built fort and the happy mess of sawdust and tools. "Mark," she said, her voice like gravel in a blender. "This is your final warning. That thing violates 17 different covenants." Evan stopped hammering and looked at her, then at me. I gave him a little nod. "It's okay." "Morning, Karen," I said, keeping my voice easy. 17? That's impressive. You must have been up all night reading the rule book." Her eyes narrowed. "I am not joking. This is a formal notice. You have 24 hours to dismantle it or the association will take action." I picked up a 2x4, checked it for straightness. "And what action would that be, Karen? Are you going to send a strongly worded letter? Maybe fine us $50? She pointed a finger at the fort, a finger with a perfect blood-red nail. "You will see. This neighborhood has standards. Your project is an eyesore. It lowers property values." I just looked at her. I thought about my time overseas, the things I'd seen, the real problems in the world, and here was this woman wound up tighter than a watching about to declare war over a kid's fort. My best friend Dave, he would have found this hilarious. He had a way of cutting through the noise. "Hale," he'd say, "some people just need a hobby." Karen Dunn's hobby was power, and she was about to get a lesson in overreach. "It's a fort for my nephew, Karen," I said, my voice flat. "It's not hurting anyone. Leave it be." She gave a little huff, a sound of pure indignation, and spun on her heel. She marched back to her own perfect house with its own perfect lawn and its complete lack of joy. Evan looked at me, his eyes wide. "Is she going to break our fort, Uncle Mark?" I put my hand on his shoulder. "Nobody. She's just full of hot air. Now, let's get this roof on. A good fort needs a roof." We worked for another hour. We got the last wall up and we're starting on the rafters. Evan was inside pretending he was a king in his castle, making decrees about mandatory ice cream and no bedtime. I was on the outside measuring a crossbeam. That's when I heard it. It started as a high-pitched whine, a power tool. I frowned, looking around. Then I saw her. Karen Dunn was back. She was standing right next to the fort, and she was holding a reciprocating saw. The blade was a blur of silver. It was already biting into one of the main support posts. My blood went cold. "Karen, stop!" I shouted, dropping my tape measure and running toward her. Evan's inside. "Stop!" She didn't even look at me. Her face was a mask of grim determination. She was focused on her work, on the destruction. The saw screamed. Then came a different sound. A sound I will never forget. The crack of splintering wood. A loud, sickening groan as the structure gave way. And then Evan's scream. It wasn't a play scream. It was real. It was terror. The fort, our beautiful half-built castle, twisted and collapsed on itself. It fell in a heap of lumber and shattered dreams, and my nephew was under it. For a split second, the world went silent. All I could see was the pile of wood and Karen Dunn standing there, the saw still humming in her hand, a puff of sawdust settling around her like a foul mist. My training, my instincts, everything in me screamed to neutralize the threat. But my heart screamed louder. It screamed my nephew's name. I didn't go for her. I went for the wreckage. I threw boards aside, my hands raw, shouting for Evan. He was crying, a hurt, scared sound that tore right through me. I finally saw him pinned under a heavy beam. His leg bent at an angle that was all wrong. His red shirt was torn and dusty. The next few minutes were a blur of controlled chaos. My first aid training kicked in. Check breathing, keep him still, talk to him. "I'm here, buddy. I've got you. We're going to get you out." Neighbors were running out of their houses. Paul from next door, a good man, was already on the phone with 911. Mrs. Gwynn from across the street was standing on her porch, her hand over her mouth, a silent, horrified witness. Karen Dunn just stood there, the saw now dangling from her hand, her face a strange mix of shock and triumph, as if she couldn't believe what she'd done, but was still glad she'd done it. The sirens grew louder. An ambulance and a police car pulled up. The EMTs were professionals, calm and efficient. They took over, stabilizing Evan, cutting his pant leg away to see the damage. A deputy stepped out of the cruiser. His name tag read Torres. He had a calm, no-nonsense look about him. He took one look at the scene, the collapsed fort, the crying child, me kneeling in the wreckage, and Karen Dunn holding a power tool. He didn't have to ask many questions. Mrs. Gwynn was already talking, her voice shaky but clear, pointing at Karen. She did it. I saw the whole thing. She cut it down with that saw while the little boy was inside. Deputy Torres walked over to Karen. His voice was quiet, but it carried. "Ma'am, I need you to put the saw down." Karen seemed to snap out of her trance. "This is my property." Well, association property. That structure was illegal. I was within my rights. Torres didn't argue, he just spoke again, a little firmer this time. "Ma'am, put the saw down." She let it clatter into the grass. He took her arm. "You are under arrest for aggravated assault and child endangerment." The click of the handcuffs was one of the most satisfying sounds I have ever heard. Deputies arrest. The district attorney files the felony charges. She started to screech then, a torrent of excuses and threats. She name-dropped the mayor. She threatened lawsuits. Torres just ignored it, leading her to the back of his car. As they loaded Evan onto a stretcher, he looked at me, his face pale with pain, tears streaming down his cheeks. "She broke Fort Kickbot, Uncle Mark," he whispered. I squeezed his hand. "We'll build it back, buddy, I promise." Stronger than before. The ambulance doors closed and it pulled away, its lights flashing. I stood there covered in sawdust and fury, watching the police car take Karen Dunn away. Later, at arraignment, the judge set bail and a strict no-contact order. Stay 300 feet from us in our home, no meetings and no messages through others. But I knew with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, this was just the beginning. A piece of paper wasn't going to stop a woman like that. We had the arrest, But we were going to need more than that. We were going to need proof so solid, so undeniable that she couldn't squirm her way out of it. We needed to show exactly what she did second by second. The day after the arrest, my house became a command center. It was quiet, too quiet. Evan was at the hospital with his mom. They were setting his leg. A clean break in the tibia. The doctors said he'd be in a cast for months. He was lucky. They said it could have been so much worse. Lucky. The word echoed in my head. I didn't feel lucky. I felt a cold, simmering anger that I hadn't felt in years. It was the kind of anger you have to control, have to channel, or it will eat you alive. My mission was clear. Build a case against Karen Dunn, not just for the police, but for us, for Evan. I needed to create a narrative, a timeline so precise and backed by evidence that no lawyer could twist it. My first call was to Paul, my neighbor. He's a single dad, an IT guy, steady, smart, and dependable. The kind of guy you want next to you in a trench, or in this case, in a suburban cul-de-sac. He came over with his laptop and a grim look on his face. "How's Evan?" he asked, setting his gear up on my kitchen table. "He'll be okay," I said. "But he's scared. He keeps having nightmares about the noise, the feeling of it falling." Paul nodded, his jaw tight. "What do you need, Mark?" "Everything," I said. "I need a timeline. I want to sync every piece of digital evidence we have. Your doorbell camera for starters. It points right at my yard. You also have the driveway camera aimed at the side yard by the oaks. That's the one that caught everything." Paul was already clicking away, already pulled it. The motion sensor triggered the moment Karen stepped onto your lawn. It recorded the whole thing. He turned the laptop toward me. There it was. A wide-angle, slightly distorted view of the side yard by the oaks. The colors were washed out, but the image was clear. We saw Karen march up to the fort. We saw her raise the saw. We could see me in the background measuring a board. We saw Evan's little head pop up in the fort's window just seconds before she started cutting. My stomach clenched. He was right there, visible. She had to have seen him. There was no way she didn't. We watched the whole horrible event unfold again, in silent, damning clarity. The cut, the collapse, my frantic dash into the frame. The video ended when the first responders arrived. "Okay," I said, my voice. "That's one angle. Now we need the other one." I had already filed a public records request for Deputy Torres's body cam footage. In our state, it's accessible, especially when you're a party to the incident. It took a few days of forms and follow-ups, but I got a secure link to the file. It was a large download. We threw both clips on the TV. Doorbell left, body cam right. Paul synced them in under a minute freeze frame, Evan's head in the window. Play. Karen glances up right at him. Then the blade kisses the post. I tasted metal. "There's your intent," Paul said. "Director's cut." I said, "Felony edition." But we needed more than just video. We needed the human element. That's where Mrs. Gwynn came in. I walked across the street. She was watering her roses, but her hands were shaking. She's a widow, lived on this street for 40 years, seen it all, she says. But not this. "Mrs. Gwynn," I started, "I know this is hard, but would you be willing to walk me through what you saw?" She put down her watering can and looked at me, her eyes sharp and clear. "I'd be happy to, Mark. That woman is a menace. What she did to that sweet boy, it's evil." We sat on her porch swing. I had a notepad. She didn't need any prompting. She described the color of the saw, the sound it made, the determined look on Karen's face. She even remembered what I was wearing. Her memory was photographic. "I was watching you and Evan all morning. She said it was so lovely seeing you two build that thing together. When I saw her march over there with that weapon, I knew she was up to no good. I almost called 911 right then. I wrote it all down." Her statement perfectly matched the doorbell video. She was the narrator for our silent movie. I spent the rest of the day putting it all together. I edited the two videos, putting them side by side in a single file. I used simple titles. 14:22 a.m. Suspect approaches structure. 10:14 a.m. Victim visible inside structure. 10:14 8 a.m. Suspect begins cutting primary support. It was cold, clinical, methodical. That was the point. I wanted to strip away all the emotion and just leave the hard, brutal facts. I made copies. One for the district attorney, one for my own lawyer for the civil suit that was sure to come, and one for my sister so she could see that we had a case, a rock-a-lid airtight case. When she watched it, she cried. But they weren't just tears of sadness. They were tears of anger and of hope. "You're going to get her, right, Mark?" she asked, wiping her eyes. I looked at the screen at the frozen image of Karen Dunn's face captured by the deputy's camera, a face that showed no remorse, only arrogance. "Yeah," I said, "we are." The evidence was locked down. The videos were saved. The witness statement was transcribed. We had the what and the how completely nailed. But a bigger question still loomed, one that gnawed at me. Why? Why would anyone do this? It was more than just a fight over neighborhood rules. This was something else, something uglier. And I had a feeling the answer was buried somewhere in the HOA's dirty laundry. The no-contact order was supposed to create a buffer, a zone of safety around my family. But a piece of paper is only as strong as the respect a person has for the law. Karen Dunn, it turned out, had none. She saw rules as things that applied to other people. The HOA called a special community meeting. The official reason was to discuss recent events and reaffirm community standards. The unofficial reason was damage control. The story had hit the local news. Our quiet little street was suddenly famous for all the wrong reasons. News vans were parked down the block. Reporters were knocking on doors. The HOA board was panicking. They booked the local elementary school gymnasium. I decided to go, not to speak, just to watch, to listen, to take the temperature of the neighborhood. Paul came with me. My sister stayed at the hospital with Evan. He was getting his bright red cast put on. He'd requested a superhero theme. I walked into that gym and the air was thick with tension. It smelled like floor wax and anxiety. Half the neighborhood was there. People were clustered in small groups whispering. I saw the rest of the HOA board at a table up front. They all looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. The vice president, a quiet man named Arthur, was nervously shuffling papers. The meeting started. Arthur mumbled his way through a prepared statement about community and safety. It was corporate nonsense. Then he opened the floor to questions. It was a disaster. People were angry. They were shouting about property values, about safety, about the HOA's liability. Through it all, I just sat in the back listening. And then the back doors of the gym burst open. In walked Karen Dunn. A collective gasp went through the crowd. She was supposed to be at home and barred from any event where I'd be. She was violating a court order right there in front of 100 witnesses. She looked terrible. Her hair was a mess. Her eyes were wild. She marched straight for the stage, snatched the microphone from a stunned Arthur, and turned to face the crowd. "You people have no idea," she shrieked, her voice echoing through the gym. "I am the victim here. I have dedicated years to this community, to maintaining our standards, and this is the thanks I get." She was unraveling. Deputy Torres was there, assigned to keep the peace at the meeting. He started moving toward the stage, his hand on his radio, his face a mask of weary professionalism. He'd seen this show before. I stayed put. My training taught me to identify all threats in a room, and my eyes weren't just on Karen. They were on the man standing near the exit. A man I recognized from photos as her adult son, a hot-headed kid named Kyle with a reputation for trouble. He was watching his mother's meltdown and his hands were clenched into fists. He looked like a powder keg waiting for a spark. Karen pointed a shaking finger out into the crowd somewhere in my direction. "He is the problem. Him and his trashy little shack. He provoked me. He flaunted the rules. Torres was on the stage now trying to talk to her. "Ma'am, you're in violation of a court order. You need to come with me now." But Karen wasn't listening to him. She was lost in her own storm of self-pity, and that's when her son Kyle made his move. He saw Torres putting a hand on his mother's arm, and he snapped. "Get your hands off my mom!" he screamed. He reached into the waistband of his jeans and he pulled out a gun. The world seemed to slow down. The murmur of the crowd died into a dead silence. All you could hear was the hum of the overhead lights. I saw the gun, a small, snub-nosed revolver. I saw the fear in the eyes of the people around me. I saw Torres immediately shift his stance, creating distance, his own hand now on his service weapon. My body tensed. I was calculating the distance between me and Kyle, the number of steps, the likely trajectory if he fired. But this wasn't my fight to lead. This was law enforcement's territory. 2 other deputies who had been by the main entrance were moving now, flanking, their movements fluid and practiced. They were a team. "Son, put the gun down," Torres said, his voice unbelievably calm. It was a command, not a request. He wasn't talking to Karen anymore. His entire focus was on the new, bigger threat. Kyle was waving the gun around, pointing it at the ceiling, then at Torres. "You're not taking her." "None of you are," he yelled, his voice cracking. This was the moment it could all go wrong. A moment of panic, a sudden move, and shots would be fired. The deputies were de-escalating, using their training. They didn't draw their weapons, they used their voices. "Nobody wants to hurt you, Kyle," the female deputy said, her voice steady. "Nobody wants to hurt your mom. Just put the gun on the floor, we can talk this through." It felt like an eternity. Kyle's eyes darted back and forth between the deputies and his mother, who was now sobbing. He was cornered out of his depth. He was a scared kid with a deadly weapon. Finally, something in him broke, his shoulders slumped. The gun wavered in his hand. "Just put it down, son," Torres repeated, his voice gentle but firm. Kyle slowly lowered his arm and placed the gun on the polished wooden floor. The instant it was down, the deputies moved. It was a blur of motion. They were on him, securing him, cuffing him. It was over in seconds. No shots fired, no one hurt, just professional textbook de-escalation. Torres, meanwhile, put the cuffs back on Karen Dunn. This time, there was no fight left in her. She was just a crumpled, weeping mess. They led both of them out of the gym. The silence they left behind was deafening. The meeting was over. People started to file out, their faces pale with shock. Paul looked at me. "You were calm through all that," he said, his own voice a little shaky. I just shrugged. "Seen worse," I said. But inside I was thinking about Evan, about how this woman's chaos, her complete disregard for rules and decency was now spreading. It was pulling in her own family. It was escalating. We had her on video. We had her violating a court order. We had her son pulling a gun in a crowded room. The case against her was getting stronger by the minute, but I still didn't have the one thing I really needed to understand. I still didn't have the motive. Why risk everything for a kid's fort? The answer, I suspected, was not going to be found in a public meeting. It was going to be found in her secrets. The meltdown at the gym changed things. Karen Dunn was no longer just a neighborhood nuisance. She was a menace, a genuine flight risk, and a danger to the public. Her bail was reviewed and significantly increased. Her son Kyle was facing serious felony charges. The Dunn family was in a world of trouble, all of their own making. But the central question still bothered me, the why of it all. Her reaction was so over the top, so disproportionate to the situation. Destroying a kid's fort and injuring him in the process, all because it violated some HOA bylaw. It didn't add up. There had to be something more. A motive buried deeper than just a desire for tidy lawns. I started digging into the HOA's public records, meeting minutes, budget reports, architectural committee decisions. It was all dry as dust, a monument to bureaucratic tedium. I was looking for a pattern, any hint of financial pressure or unusual activity. I found nothing. It felt like a dead end. Then I got a message. It was an anonymous email, short and to the point. It just said, "Check the property sale records for 312 Willow Creek Lane and ask Arthur why he's so quiet, Arthur, the nervous HOA vice president." And 312 Willow Creek Lane was the house directly behind mine. It had been on the market for months. I did what the email said.